Welcome to Guilty Minds Navigating in Criminal Law, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of criminal law, exploring fascinating cases, legal precedents, and the intricacies of the justice system. Hi, I'm Philipp Frejoles.
And Lyrica Solitario, your host for today's episode. And today, we have our blackmates as our guest speakers, and we will be delving into the beauty of culpa and dolo.
For our listeners who are planning to take up law or those who are simply interested in the roller coaster adventure of law, since our topic is centered on dolo and culpa, it is best to trace back the roots of these concepts, which is criminal law. So criminal law is a branch of public substantive law in which it defines crimes, treats their nature, and provides for the respective punishments. Criminal law is considered as public law because it deals with the relations of the state and the individual.
To kick things off, let's dive right in. For our listeners who might not be familiar, could we briefly explain what culpa and dolo mean in the context of criminal law?
Under Article 3 of the Revised Penal Code, definition, acts and omissions punishable by law are felonies, or delitos. Felonies are committed not only by means of deceit or dolo, but also by means of fault, or culpa. There is deceit when the act is performed with deliberate intent, and there is fault when the wrongful act results from imprudence, negligence, lack of foresight, and lack of skill. In criminal law, culpa refers to negligence or the failure to exercise reasonable care. On the other hand, dolo pertains to intentional wrongdoing or acts committed with the knowledge that they are unlawful. These distinctions are crucial in determining the level of culpability and the appropriate legal consequences.
To elaborate more, Article 3 classifies felonies. According to the means by which they are committed, we have intentional felonies and culpable felonies. The second paragraph of Article 3 states that felonies are committed not only by means of deceit or dolo, but also by means of fault or culpa. So let's distinguish these two. Under intentional felonies, the act or omission of the offender is malicious. The act is performed with deliberate intent or with malice, and it has the intention to cause an injury to another. Culpable felonies, on the other hand, it is the act or omission of the offender which is not malicious, the incident of another act performed without malice, and the injury caused by the offender to another person is unintentional. Dolos, equivalent to malice, which is the intent to do an injury to another, it has the intention to do an injury to the person, property, or right of another. Such offender acts with malice. If the act or omission is punished by the Revised Penal Code, he is liable for intentional felony.
That's right, Lai. Now let's hear our guest speakers about their learnings and experiences with our topic for today's episode. Let's start with Gabriel. Briefly introduce yourself and you may start sharing about the topic, dolo and culpa.
Hello everyone, I'm Gabriel Claire D. Rennie Jane. I'm in my first year of law school at University of San Carlos. It really interests my imagination listening to podcasts focusing on crimes and what it's like studying law. It somehow ignited all the topics I've learned in criminal law and the experiences I encountered in this law school journey of mine. So in our class on criminal law, it is really inculcated in us what is dolo and culpa, since this is the foundation of criminal law. For our listeners here, I can share a very simple scenario that for me can aid those who are non-law students but interested in the adventure of crimes, or those who plan on taking up law soon. This scenario was also my guiding tool to understand dolo from culpa. Let us take into imagination the story of Sleeping Beauty. Maleficent built a sewing machine which just a prick of a finger can cause the death of Aurora. In this scenario, Maleficent has the freedom not to build such sewing machine in order to preserve the safety of Aurora. She was not compelled by anyone to build that sewing machine, which therefore satisfies the first requisite, which is freedom. She also has the moral capacity because she knows even from the beginning this can cause injury and danger to the life of Aurora. This satisfies the requisite of freedom because Maleficent is rational enough to know that it can cause danger. Maleficent was driven to create such deadly sewing machine because of her anger towards the royal family, which is why she built it to create prejudice to the royal family and also to their one and only heir to the throne. As such, it complied to the last requisite, which is intent to commit felony. I used the plot of Sleeping Beauty to really remember the requisite of dolo because I tend to have a hard time comprehending the differences between dolo and culpa. The only key point I take into consideration that would ring a bell for me to determine a case that belongs to culpa is that the accused should not have any intent to injure the victim.
Thank you, Gabriel. Now let's move on to our next guest, Kayla.
I'm Kayla Yumang. Also, I'm a first-year law student at USC. I'm thrilled to be part of this community because I have a passion for podcast listening. I strongly value personal growth and self-improvement of one another. So that's why we do this, so that we can learn together. Certainly, as a law student navigating the intricacies of criminal law, my experiences with dolo or intent and culpa or negligence will involve a practical combination. In our criminal law classes, we had discussed landmark cases that involve intent and negligence. also delving into legal research to understand how courts have interpreted and applied the concept of dolo and culpa in real cases. So let's consider this made-up case entitled the intersection collision. The background of this case is that person Y is driving his car through a busy intersection. The traffic light turns red and person Y fails to notice it and proceeds through the intersection. Unfortunately, he collides with another vehicle driven by person X who had the right of way. For person Y's action, it can be categorized as culpa or negligence. He failed to exercise reasonable care by disregarding the red light or the red traffic light, a clear signal indicating that he should stop. Person Y's failure to adhere to traffic laws and exercise caution resulted in the collision. So person Y may be held liable for negligence in civil court. Person X, the victim, can potentially file a lawsuit against person Y for damages, arguing that his failure to obey traffic signals and exercise due care led to the accident. Now let us alter the circumstances. Assume that person Y is aware of the red light. Purposefully, he accelerates through the intersection, crashing with the person X's automobile. In this amended scenario, person Y's acts involve dolo or intent. By colliding with person X's vehicle, he knowingly violated the traffic laws and caused hurt. This intentional violation distinguishes the case from simple negligence.
Thanks, Kayla. Now, it's time for Nicole.
I am overwhelmed to be invited as a guest to speak and contribute on academic matters, most especially for Criminal Law 1. Hi, I am Nicole Alvarez-Dean, a first-year law student as well, and criminal law interests me since then. As a Marites, I guess. Kidding aside, I would like to cite a news that was reported around mid of this year for our listeners to visualize what culpa is. It was when police authorities had a planned operation to arrest their target suspect, who was then allegedly on a small-sized bangka fixing his net for fishing. Police authorities were quick to shoot their target, alleging that it was only a warning shot. Unfortunately, the said target suspect died on the spot and later on reported that he was wrongfully identified and is not the actual target suspect. The identified man was only a minor who was out and about doing their livelihood, which is fishing. It is an act of culpa since the police authorities were negligent for the act of firing a warning shot, which ended the life of a mistakenly identified person. Dolo, on the other hand, is an act wherein deceit and malice or deliberate intent is present, such as gruesome murders that rooted from the suspect's anger towards the victim or yet due to jealousy. One example is wherein a businessman who was grating coconut, which was in line of their business, within their gated property, and when a man or this suspect stepped slightly inside the open gate and shot him from behind. Later on, it was found that the suspect had a debt to the victim, which was only worth 3,000 pesos. The suspect got angry since the victim tried collecting the said amount already. It is an act of dolo since the suspect's act of shooting the victim was done with deliberate intent and rooted from his anger towards the victim.
Thank you, Nicole, for your sharing. Now, it's time for Peter to share his thoughts.
Good evening, everyone. I am Peter Alahas, also a first-year law student that is interested in criminal law. Now let us talk about two things, dolo and culpa, and put them in a New Year's context. Think of dolo like this. You promise yourself no more beer in the new year because of the liquor ban in the locality, but then you go and sneak a can on purpose and smuggle them throughout the place. That's dolo. Knowingly breaking the rules with knowledge, moral discernment on things, and most especially, the malicious intent to commit a felony. Now, culpa is a bit different. It's like you're also at the New Year's party, grabbing a treat with friends, and without thinking, you accidentally grab a beer can out of the joyous event and out of pressure. So that's not a purpose. Both differ because the former is done on purpose, the latter is done out of negligence. So let us keep this in mind as we step into the new year.
Thank you for that, Peter. And now, it's time for our friend Bea to share her thoughts.
Hi, you're listening to Bea Dominic C. Pilo. I'm back again, but this time I am in collaborations with my fellow law blockmates. Yes, you heard it right. I'll be tackling culpa and dolo in the context of a law student. Let's explore how these concepts relate to a law student. In legal studies, law students learn about culpa and dolo as part of their studies in tort law, a branch of civil law that deals with civil wrongs and their remedies. They study cases and legal principles to understand how the concepts of fault and intent are applied in different situations. In analysis of cases, law students analyze cases to identify whether a particular incident involves a culpa or dolo. They examine the facts, assess the level of care exercised by the parties involved, and determine if there was intentional misconduct. And lastly, in legal writing, law students may be required to discuss and analyze cases involving culpa and dolo. They need to articulate legal principles explain how they apply to specific situations, and argue their position based on relevant case law and statutes. Thank you and have a happy new year.
Thank you, Bea. That was great to hear your voice again. Now it's time for our next sharer, Mary.
For context, Criminal A is aware that his victim has in his possession a valuable watch. Criminal A breaks into the victim's house with a specific aim of stealing the watch. They succeed in stealing the watch and promptly escape. This is an example of a criminal acting with dolo. Criminal A intentionally committed the theft, fully aware of the consequences and with the intent of obtaining the victim's valuable watch. An example of culpa would be person B visiting her friend's house and accidentally knocking over a valuable vase, causing it to break. Person B was not careful and did not take reasonable care to avoid damaging the vase. The vase breaks as a result of person B's carelessness. Person B acted with culpa because they did not intentionally mean to break the vase, but the negligence and carelessness did. Dolo is intentional wrongdoing, while culpa is fault or negligence without the intent to cause harm.
Thank you for giving an example, Mary. Now, it's time for Butch to share on what he has to say about the topic.
Hi, I'm Butch Armaginier, also a first-year student in law school from University of San Carlos. Regarding dolo and culpa, let me think. To simply put it, when a crime is committed with intention, of course it is dolo. But when a crime is committed with negligence or let's just say by accident, then it is culpa. So, how can there be an accident or intentional crime? So imagine a person firing a gun into the air during a celebration. So let's just say it's a New Year celebration since it is what we are celebrating right now. So if that bullet unintentionally injures someone like ligaw na bala, then it might be considered as culpa because the action was reckless and lacked the necessary precaution to harm that person, of course. On the other hand, if the person aimed at someone with the intent to harm, it would be dolo. So basically, what determines whether or not a crime itself is dolo in culpa, it depends on the mental state or the awareness of the person who did the action, who do the action. So the determination basically of whether the crime is culpa and dolo is very important in administering justice because this basically determines the guilt of the person, and this can help, of course, the jury identify what penalty is best suited to be imposed on the accused. So basically, this is what I've learned on our criminal law class, and yes, that's all.
That was great, Butch. I certainly listened to every single word of that piece. Now it's time for Denib.
Hi, I'm Denib Kent Viterbo. Just like them, I am also a first-year student taking up Crim 1. Culpa, when there is no intention to harm others, but the harm was still done either through negligence, lack of skill, or even through ignorance of the law. Example, the death of a child due to not bringing them to the doctor in time, while dolo intentionally carried out the cause, harm, and injury to others. Example, corruption.
Thank you for that, Denib. And now, here comes Francis. He is also here to share his thoughts on the topic.
Hello, I'm Francis Bodin-Yusores. I am also a first-year law student taking up Criminal Law 1. Basically, determining the presence of dolo or malicious intent in criminal cases involves a consideration of key principles. Dolo refers to a deliberate and purposeful commitment of wrongdoing, such as intentionally causing harm to another person during a fight. In proving dolo, prosecutors must establish that the individual engaged in the altercation with a specific intention to cause harm, influencing the severity of potential penalties.
Thank you for that, Francis. It's time for Eliza Guerrea.
And let's say during a Christmas party at a friend's house, there's a beautifully decorated tree adorned with delicate ornaments and lights. And amidst the celebration, a guest accidentally bumps into a Christmas tree, causing it to topple over and shatter expensive glass decorations, injuring another guest in the process. And in this situation, the guest who had inadvertently knocked over the tree did not purposefully aim to cause harm or damage, and their action was unintentional, resulting from a lack of caution or care when moving around the crowded party space. And this would be considered culpa or negligence, failing to exercise reasonable care or attention in a situation where no one should have been more careful.
Now, our last sharer, Einivan.
In determining whether a person acted with dolo intention or culpa negligence involve examining specific legal principles. So, dolo entails knowingly and purposely committing a wrongful act, whereas culpa pertains to unintentional wrongdoing resulting from negligence or carelessness. The distinction between dolo and the culpa plays a crucial role in influencing the severity of penalties imposed on the accused. When dolo is present, it indicates that an individual deliberately engaged in a wrongful conduct.
It was great to hear your thoughts, Einivan, and that would be the last part of the sharing. Thank you for listening to Guilty Minds Navigating Criminal Law.
And stay tuned for our next exciting episode. See you!